Hi, I'm Kristin Omdahl and welcome back to my studio. In this three-part video series, I'm going to show you how to make these beautiful crochet lace sleeves. You'll need Be So Fine yarn, #1 fingering weight bamboo yarn, plus an E4 or 3.5 millimeter crochet hook to make these sleeves. The link provided in the video description will take you to the free pattern page where you can see the chart and the written instructions, and there'll also be a link for an ad-free PDF download pattern. In videos part 1 and 2, we're going to go over not only the written instructions but also the chart instructions for the pattern to crochet the sleeves. Then in the third video, I'm going to show you how to block them and sew them into whatever garment you want to add these beautiful sleeves to. Let's get started. At the end of row 12, I decide to test out my sleeve and see how it looks in the armhole opening on the dress. And I realize that it's a couple of inches away from being the length that I need to come all the way around the entire circumference of the sleeve. So I ended up working rows 11 and 12 one more time for a total of 14 rows. And by doing 14 rows of the pattern, I bring my sleeve to the correct length to come all the way around the circumference of the sleeve. So when I sew it into place, it will reach all the way around. Depending on the size you're making or the size of the opening of the sleeve hole on the garment that you're adding the sleeve to, you can modify this pattern in a number of ways pretty easily. First of all, you can adjust the size of the sleeve cap by adjusting how many rows. So the original chart is for 12 rows. If that row works for the length of your sleeve hole opening, great. I was able to add 2 more rows in the existing pattern to make it the length that I needed for my sleeve. If you're making larger sizes and you need more width around the sleeve as well as more length, what you can do is not only add more rows, but add more width within the shells. Notice that as we made these shells, we grew them gradually in size. We went from a 2 double crochet, chain 3, 2 double crochet shell in row 8 and row 9. Then in row 10 we went to 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet rows. And then in rows rows 11 and 12 we switched to 4 double crochet, chain 3, 4 double crochet. You could continue on for a few more rows in this size to create width and height, and then if you needed more width in addition to the height, you could even increase these to 5 double crochet, chain 3, 5 double crochet, and do that for several rows as well. Next, we want to block our sleeves before we sew them to the armhole opening, and you'll need a small bowl of lukewarm water and a teaspoon of Wrapture All Natural Delicate Wash, some pins, and a blocking mat. Next, you add 1 capful of Wrapture All Natural Delicate Wash to a bowl. Add some room temperature water, and we'll soak our sleeves in the water for a couple of minutes. Next, we want to squeeze out the water from our sleeve. You don't want to wring it. Wringing can damage the stitches. And then next we're going to take our sleeve and try to get as much water out of it as possible by rolling it up in a towel. And really trying to press all of that water out. The only thing you don't want to do is wring or twist your stitches because that could damage the yarn or the stitch work, but you just want to press as much as you can and try to get that water to leave the yarn and go into the dry towel. Next, we'll set it up on a blocking board and grab some pins and start pinning it out. So I like to work in midpoints, so I'm going to start at the edges and the midpoint. So you start all the way at the edge and then in the center, and then work to the center of each side. So we really start with the 4 points, north, south, east and west, and then from there we work in the midpoints. So in between these two I put a pin, in between these two I put a pin, in between these two I put a pin, and I keep doing that until I've done all of my midpoints. And then from there you would go to now your smaller midpoints. And as you're doing this, those midpoints get smaller. The section between them gets smaller, and you keep doing this until you think you've put in enough pins. I want this edge to stay pretty straight because this is the edge that's going to get sewn to the armhole opening of the dress. And then this, it will be the actual sleeve. And if you're making this into a long sleeve version, this is actually what you would continue working on, and we'll do that in a future video. In this video, we're simply blocking and sewing the dried sleeve to the dress. Okay, so now our sleeve is blocking, and we'll leave this to dry. In order to expedite the drying time, it is helpful to put this under a fan, whether it's a ceiling fan or an oscillating floor fan. Once it's dry, you want to unpin and then pin your blocked sleeve to the perimeter of the sleeve opening. I like to get it eased all the way around so that I'm not making any guesses on where to sew the sleeve to the opening. Using a simple whip stitch, I'm sewing the sleeve to the dress, adding a stitch about every, I don't know, a little less than a ½ inch apart, and just nipping into the very edge of the arm and nipping into the very edge of the sleeve. Just barely grabbing the first little bit of each, and we're getting a nice invisible seam. I'll show you a close-up in a minute. You could use a sewing needle and a regular sewing thread, but because this yarn is so fine to begin with and it matches so perfectly, obviously because it's the yarn that we made the sleeve in, I find that it matches really well, and again, being so fine, it's really easy to sew with. And my yarn needle happens to be extremely sharp. Okay, when I added my yarn to the sleeve opening, I made it twice this long and sewed it in half down here so that I would have a decent amount of sewing thread to make it all the way up to the center, but not have to go all the way around. It keeps the thread a little shorter so it doesn't tangle as much, and so now I can weave in this loose end and start all over with the other half of my thread and meet up here in the center again. So I'm going to weave this loose end now. Easiest place to weave it through is in the yarn portion on the sleeve. Okay, so I've got my yarn threaded again, and we'll start back down at the bottom center. I'm going to move the bulk of the sleeve out of my way. There, that'll help. Yeah, a little bit more. And I'll repeat what I did for the back side of the sleeve on the front now. And now we have a beautiful finished sleeve. Next, we will repeat this entire process with the second sleeve and the second sleeve opening. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions at all, please leave them for me in the comments. Please make sure to watch the other videos in this playlist because there are 3 parts 2 parts for how to make the sleeves, and then the 3rd video tells you how to block them and sew them into the dress or top or whatever you're going to decorate with these gorgeous lace sleeves. Let us make time to create, share, and inspire today and every day. I'll see you in the next video.